Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Midweek program at the J.C. Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake, and I'm the education assistant here at the Arboretum. And today we are just off of the fantasy circle because there is a big, beautiful loropetalum right here behind me that is in full bloom right now. Today we've got our director, Mark Weathington, joining us. He's going to be talking about witch hazels and their relatives, plants in the family HAM-A-MEL-I-DAC-E, which is a personal favorite of mine, and this is a time of year when they are very floriferous, so it should be a wonderful program. Those of you joining us on YouTube, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and feel free to leave a comment down below. And with the announcements out of the way, I will pass things over to Mark to tell us all about HAM-A-MEL-I-DAC-E.
All right. Thank you, Blake. HAM-A-MEL-I-DAC-E, one of my favorite groups of plants. It's a group that I wish I could explain to people how to identify something in the witch hazel family, the HAM-A-MEL-I-DAC-E family. I can't. When you look at the descriptions of the family, it's like, it could be this or this. It could be that or that. It could have this or this or this characteristic. And that happens, not infrequently with plants, but usually you can kind of look at somebody in a plant in that family. And if you are around plants like we are here enough, you can pretty much say, I'm pretty sure that's in this family or even in this genus, where it's hard to do that with some of the HAM-A-MEL-I-DAC-E. Right now, most authorities say there's 28 genera in the family, and we grow most of the temperate ones, but then and most of them are in East Asia. But then we have some North American ones in the southeast of the United States, and then some Mexico and Central American ones that we don't grow really, other than there's one witch hazel there that we can grow. And then there's one in West Asia, Middle East, and several in New Zealand, and then a couple in Africa. So they are really all over the place. Or, excuse me, one in Africa. But the namesake of the genus is the Hamamelis, the witch hazel family, which people know witch hazels, but they should grow them more. They're really way underused in the landscape. They can grow in full sun. They can grow in shade. They're ideal under deciduous shade where they're getting lots of sunlight, for parts of the year, but then it'll get shaded a little bit. I brought a sample of several, and witch hazels. You can get witch hazels that are blooming in fall all the way through spring, depending on which witch hazel you're doing. Hamamelis virginiana is really a fall bloomer, but then as you go through with the other species, you get more winter and then early spring. So we're actually kind of at the tail end of the blooming season. These are the late blooming ones that are really going now, but we have a whole bunch of witch hazels that have already passed their peak, and so I couldn't get some of them to show you. I could get twigs. Maybe a few have a couple leaves starting to come out, but nothing to really see. So I've got several here for you. Well, so you can see witch hazels, but I want to also mention another plant that is probably very familiar to most of you. Even without leaves, you can probably identify this. This is a sweet gum, liquid ambar styraciflua, or gumball tree, if you call it that, but a common native plant in our woodlands here in North Carolina. There are some Asian ones as well, and many authorities put this in the HAM-A-MEL-I-DAC-E, put it in the witch hazel family, especially American botanists and taxonomists. It really looks like it's kind of an outgroup, and when you look at the phylogenies, and there's a species called Altinga, or genus Altinga, that is that this is much closer to. And so now generally most taxonomists are putting this in the Altingiaceae family. It's amazing. You get all kinds of new genera and new families in your garden if you just wait long enough, because the taxonomists change the names. So the witch hazels, though. The witch hazels, there's 5 species or so, depends again on your taxonomist of choice. There's a couple species in Asia, Hamamelis-Mollis and Hamamelis japonica, that's the Chinese and the Japanese red buds. There's Hamamelis vernalis, the spring witch hazel, and the Virginia witch hazel, Hamamelis virginiana. Sometimes Hamamelis vernalis is called the Ozark witch hazel. And then Hamamelis virginiana, there's a couple forms, a deep south form, sometimes called variety Henriae, and a Mexican form, variety Mexicana, that I really like, but those are all done flowering. But most of what you will get in the trade is hybrids between the 2 Asian species, which we call Hamamelis ex intermedia, because they're intermediate. And that's all of these right here that I'm showing are those intermediates. This one is a new one for us. This is the first year it's flowered in the garden. We just planted it last year, so it's first year in the garden. This is Candlelight Vigil, and it is a real clear, pure yellow. I think it is absolutely gorgeous. It's got fairly big petals, and that's, what you see on witch hazels are these long, strappy petals. And the ones that flower in the middle of winter, they'll curl up, have ice covering them in freezing temperatures, and then they'll open right back up. It isn't even like some plants that it kills the flowers and new ones, will open. This, unless it's just extreme cold, they'll just kind of bide their time and open back up, which is great. The hybrids are generally said to not be fragrant, but I can actually smell this hybrid. So it's got some fragrance to it. So if Candlelight Vigil, I think this is it looks like, from what we've seen, from growing it in containers and having it in the garden, it's gonna be a compact plant. You can kind of see compared to this one, Barbara. I don't know who Barbara is, but she has a very nice witch hazel named after her. You can see that on Candlelight Vigil, you have these very short internodes between where the leaves were, where the growth is. Whereas on Barbara and some of the others, you have these very long internodes on there. So we think Candlelight Vigil is going to be smaller, but we're not 100% sure because we don't believe what they put on the tag. So we want to see it. And now that it's out in the garden, it may jump. That sometimes happens. So Barbara is more of a bicolor here, with kind of the yellow and then the going to orange and burgundy. And when these petals fall, there's little burgundy parts. There's little cupules that hold the flowers in there. Those little cupules will stay on, and they'll be red and be, moderately attractive. They're not going to knock you out. But these are both, 50-mile-an-hour plants. You'll see them driving 50 miles an hour down the road. Not all witch hazels are like that. This is one I actually really like. It's at the end of the season, but I brought it anyway. It's one called Doerak. Doerak. I'm guessing maybe that's Dutch or something, because they do a lot of those over there. I didn't look up, try to get that translated, but that's my guess. I might be completely off on that. It started out, we thought this was one that was going to be compact. It's growing bigger now, still not overly vigorous. And the petals are short. It really does not have these long, strappy petals that you get on Barbara here. But when it's in full flower, it's like school bus yellow. And it's really bright. And and deeper than Candlelight Vigil. I really like it. I can see where some people might not.
While you're doing that, Mark, I looked up Doerak. It is a Dutch word for rascal or mischievous person.
Well, there you go. Little rascal.
There it is.
And this final one is one we've been growing for a while, and it's really beautiful. It's actually growing just behind my, you can't see it, but just over here. And I grabbed it as Blake was giving the introduction. I was seeing how long, if he was going to need to vamp or anything for me. But it's one called Sweet Sunshine. And I realized I didn't get any of the good kind of pale yellow ones. So I did that, and you can see this thing's just loaded with flowers. It just produces so many flower buds. So I want to talk about flower buds and witch hazels. Witch hazels tend to grow pretty much kind of vase shape. They're, branch very low and they go wide, and they're beautiful like that. We have one that's Jelena, not Helena.
You sure?
I'm sure.
Oh yeah? How are you sure?
It is, it's European.
Okay.
Not Hispanic.
Gotcha.
It's not, so it's not.
Goodness me.
And it's not Jelena either.
Okay.
It's not, get these things out of the way. Nice breeze though.
Yeah, it is.
It's not Jelena, which is what I used to call it. And it's not Helena, like I always want to call it.
Right.
It is Jelena.
Gotcha.
With a J. But that's really widespreading. It's over flowering now, and it's a real coppery one. It's mostly over. I have this one, I found one or two little flowers on here. Let me get this so you can see it right here. But it's real coppery, and it's gorgeous, but it's not a 50-mile-an-hour plant, because that coppery color, if you have other plants around it, can kind of blend in, but then you come upon it and it is absolutely breathtaking. It is just so beautiful. And it's a real old one, and it's one of the very best out there. But I got ahead of myself. I wanted to started talking about different colors, but I wanted to talk about one of the things I do when I grow. Okay, so they normally go kind of widespread, and they can get pretty big with time. And when you have them out in the garden in the fall, you'll see there'll be all these little flower buds that are hanging off, little buds hanging off all over the place. It's obvious what are flower buds and what are leaf buds. I plant too many plants, and I don't have enough space for all of my plants. And the flower buds form on last year's growth, a little bit on the early current season's growth, and early spring they'll form. But most of this summer's growth will grow out and won't have buds on there. And sometimes, if they're real happy, that can be in the weather, and all the conditions are good, they can put on, a foot, 18 inches of new growth. So, and all the buds will be kind of on the inside. So what I like to do is I will come in, and imagine this were longer. I'll come in and cut it back almost halfway, right above a leaf bud. And what I find is, if you do that, you will get a lot of flower buds, more than you would otherwise, forming on that smaller amount of growth. And that's also because this new growth without flower buds tends to extend longer. You tend to have longer internodes. And so I keep my plants compact that way. I'm cutting back, half of the growth every year, and I actually get a better display of flowers. It's really, really showy that way. And I'm not a pruner at my house. I'm not one of those people who thinks I need to prune everything unless I decide not to. I'm a person who doesn't prune anything unless I decide I want to or need to.
Hey Mark, while we're speaking about not wanting to prune things, Marilyn asked a question about these Hamamelis cultivars that you're highlighting. She was wondering if any of them actually dropped their leaves in the autumn so that you don't have to.
That is the next thing.
Okay.
Thank you, Marilyn, for asking that. If you've grown witch hazels in the past, especially the species witch hazels, but also some of the older cultivars, one thing you'll notice is they will hold on to all their leaves all winter into the spring. So they will have brown dead leaves on there. And if you go in there and shake the tree to get them to drop, they won't drop. And if you go in there and pull the leaves off, you will usually tear off the flower buds. I have spent more than a little amount of time at different botanic gardens with little, clippers or whatever, snipping off the leaves. I thought I was being hazed at the first garden where I was told to do that. But my boss was serious, and now I'm still the same way. The newer selections, that is one of the things they're selecting against, is that leaf retention. So the newer cultivars tend to drop their leaves or drop a lot of their leaves. I won't say all of them, but they drop enough that in my own garden, I will go out and snip those leaves because they really obscure the flowers in the fall. I've heard people say, oh, I like them on there. It gives winter interest. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't.
I've heard Greg say that.
I know. I wasn't going to call him out specifically, but yeah, I've heard Greg say that as well. And I won't say
strokes for different
he's either
folks.
lying or he has bad taste about in that. There are some plants that I think it's okay. I like some of the beeches okay. Leaf retention in plants tends to be, like in beeches, tends to be a juvenility thing. And as they get older, they will do that less and less. But the older selections of Hamamelis and the species, it doesn't matter how old they are. They keep their leaves pretty often. So,
Mark, could you clarify for us what time of year you're pruning the Hamamelis to get that flush and growth for more flowers?
After the flower buds are set
Okay.
for the coming year. So
Okay.
last year, after the flower buds were set in the fall, once my plant was dormant,
Okay.
but I have some early blooming ones, so you want to get it done before then.
Gotcha.
So you're cutting then.
Okay.
And then that reduces the growth the following year.
Gotcha.
You brought your plant in. It actually doesn't reduce the growth. It makes your plant smaller. It will grow vigorously after it flowers, and in the spring, in the summer, it'll grow vigorously. And then, but the flower buds it forms on the what you left. The part I left beyond the flower buds sets a ton of flower buds. So the 2024 growth, I cut in half. And during 2025, on that old 2024 growth, lots of flower buds set. And then the 2025 growth, I cut back after it's dormant. So you're always kind of a year behind. If you cut beyond the flower buds, you will not have any flowers that spring, but you will the following year, unless you go really hard. So for whatever reason, and it is not because the flower color makes a difference on blooming time, but most of our other colors are past. So I tried to get a little bit. This is Hamamelis intermedia. This is a hybrid between the two Asian species, and this is one called Tsukuba no Kurenai, which is the closest to a true red that we grow. I don't know what. So that would be the peacock from or of Kurenai.
Okay. No kidding.
I don't know what.
I would need to
Kurenai.
see it written down. I know Kurenai can mean it doesn't come from, but however it's spelled, we'll tell you. Yeah, we'll tell you more clearly. So you need a bit more context. You need a lot of context.
You need a lot of copy. So this one is a real odd one. This is the Ozark witch hazel, Hamamelis vernalis, and it's one called Blue Moon. And I mean, there's nothing blue about it, but it is a weird color, kind of almost lavender-esque color. And people were very excited when it came out. It was a real color breakthrough. But it's not a 50-mile-per-hour plant, that's for sure. It's different, but
it's interesting.
That's right.
How about that?
I actually don't get fragrance from that one.
Okay.
Usually you do from vernalis, but
sure.
But they can be yellow, all shades of yellow, coppery, reds, but you get mostly yellows and oranges are the main. And then you get into some of the deep kind of orange, almost burgundy in some of them. And the Mexican form of Hamamelis virginiana is almost white, and I find it really pretty. We sold some, and nobody seemed to want them.
Oh.
So the other, even the most probably ubiquitous HAM-A-MEL-I-DAC-E, or perhaps coming close to being the second most ubiquitous, is Loropetalum. So the species Loropetalum looks like this. It is green leaves and white flowers. It's a beautiful, beautiful plant, and it's one that's been growing for a long, long time. It really is a spectacular thing, and I've seen it pretty widespread in China. Its biggest problem is it's planted so widely that, I have to stop myself from being a plant snob and going, oh, Loropetalum.
Right.
But the truth is, they're fantastic plants. Mm-hmm. They're tough. They're easy to grow. They'll grow in sun to pretty dense shade. Don't flower as well in the shade. And you can hedge them, you can chop them to the ground and let them resprout. They're actually, the one thing you don't see much, which is a great way to grow them, is as a single trunk tree. They're actually gorgeous as a single trunk tree with this beautiful head. So JC was actually the person who really introduced the public to the breakthrough, which was these pink flowered forms. Early ones that were just, called them variety rubrum, Loropetalum chinense variety rubrum, Zhaozhou pink, Zhaozhou fuchsia was one of the early ones. And the early ones of these, so they'd be pink and they would have burgundy leaves. The burgundy color kind of fades over the summer. So we've got here, this one is Loropetalum chinense variety rubrum currani. Didn't like currani.
No kidding.
I didn't even notice that when I was collecting them. But it's sold as Jazz Hands Dwarf Pink. Now, I don't know. This is, what, approaching 3 feet? 2 of those feet are last year's new growth.
Yeah.
It is notorious that that Loropetalums have been called dwarf. There are so many ones that they call dwarf, and they all get big. It's get 3 to 4 feet, and it is, 12, 18 feet. They're humongous, and keep doing that, and people keep buying them to have a 3 or 4 foot plant, and so they have to keep cutting them back and cutting them back and cutting them back. There are now some actual dwarf ones. This is actually a fairly recent one, and it's not dwarf, but there's one called Purple Pixie. Its actual cultivar name is Shanglo. There's a Shanghai, Shanglo. And then this one is one of the best of the reds. Let me turn around so you get good color. It's as close to red as I've ever seen. And this is Shang Red, and it's sold as Red Diamond. I don't know why you would name something, the little dwarf one, Shanglo, and then call it Purple Pixie. I mean, Shanglo is an awesome name.
In it, though.
But JC saw these somewhere in Asia, or saw a picture, heard about them, and was desperate for them. And it happened, a friend of the Arboretum, a great botanist, Jim Waddick, was able to bring one back from Japan or China. And I believe JC flew up to where he lived in Michigan or Ohio and hand carried on the plane this little tiny plant back. And that really started the craze. Nobody was growing these white flowered forms, the species forms. Nobody was interested in, but man, these pink flowers, and that first one was more like this, went crazy. And in the spring and for really most of the summer, you have good purple foliage. This is one I grabbed. I didn't write down which name it was, but you can see the new growth on this one. It's beautiful. So the Loropetalums will flower in spring, but most of the cultivars will kind of continue to flower all season long. They're almost ever blooming, and really they make great plants. It's just anytime a plant starts to get overused, I start to get sick of it.
Sure.
And they do go wide and can take up a lot of space. And generally, we've bought them, because it says it's going to be 3 feet, or it says it's going to be 6 feet, or 8 feet on the tag, and they all get bigger. And I have a great photo of Greg at the Honshu Botanic Garden, I think. Maybe it was in Japan. It was the Kushikawa Botanic Garden, the University of Tokyo's garden. And there's a Loropetalum, white flowered one species, that probably it would have taken 3 or 4 people to put their arms around it.
Whoa.
It's so massive. I have a picture of him under it, so you can see the height. And it's funny, when he was getting ready to come here, I typed in our photo database, Kushikawa, because I knew I had that picture, and I wanted to, share that picture when he joined the team. And lo and behold, there were some old JC pictures from Kushikawa Botanic Garden, and there's a picture of JC standing under that exact same tree.
No kidding.
It's almost eerie how
unreal.
Perfect they are under that. I love that. It's just this perfect.
Kidding.
Simony. So you've probably seen this, and you can see, it's pretty obvious with these that they're related to what we know as witch hazels. The big difference is they form their flower buds. Their leaves are differently shaped very much, but they form their flower buds late in the season, and they form them on the new growth, the tips of the branches and the axils, whereas the witch hazels form their buds earlier in the season on the old growth, and so you get more flowers inside the plant than outside. All right, another one you might know is Fothergilla, or Fothergilla, as a lot of people like to call them.
Oh yeah.
Fothergilla is native to the southeastern U.S. exclusively. That's the only place you'll find them, is the southeastern U.S. In the wild, what you'll generally get if you find it is you'll get a little twig like this, and then 3, 5, 10 feet away, you'll find another little twig like this. And it's a rhizome, a sucker going across there. However, you take that and you put it in a container and grow it and put it in the landscape, and it becomes a shrub. But you rarely, in my experience, see it that way in the wild. You do some, but not often. These are obviously deciduous, like the witch hazels, whereas the Loropetalum are evergreen. And there's 4 species and one very common hybrid. 2 of the species are fairly new in terms of being discovered, and that's right here in our own backyards. So the two that I learned as the only 2 species were Fothergilla major and Fothergilla parviflora. One was big, one was small. Most of what grew well for us, we discovered, we didn't realize it often at the time, was hybrid. So Fothergilla ex media became the hybrid, and that's what you see a lot with the better growing ones, at least for us. But then we discovered Fothergilla milleri. Just very recently it was discovered, and our NC State's own Tom Ranney did a lot of work on it. And the others are natural tetraploids. That means they have 4 sets of chromosomes, whereas milleri has 2 sets of chromosomes. It's diploid. So, because that tends to be smaller. We have a beautiful one in our lath house of Fothergilla milleri, which is what this is. It's very rare in collections and anywhere. We got it from a good friend from who used to be at the Atlanta Botanic Garden, who's one of the great native plant conservationists. He brought us one, and it was a little sickly plant, and I thought it was going to not be a good plant for us. It is spectacular in there. And then this is one of the hybrids, Fothergilla ex media redneck nation. I'm sorry, not Fothergilla parviflora. That's the 4th species. That's more recent. Fothergilla gardeniae.
Okay.
Don't email me. I got it right. And this has been one of the better performing ones for us here, this Redneck Nation selection. Not my favorite name. But there are also some selections that have really beautiful blue-green foliage. And this is kind of where sometimes you can see similarities between the species. Foliage on Fothergilla is very reminiscent of witch-hazels. So you get a little bit of similarity. But they have these honey-scented little bottle brush flowers in the spring, all at the tips of the plant. And then in the fall, this is one of the best shrubs we can grow in the Southeast for fall color. And I was really impressed last year. I remember looking at this Fothergilla milleri and being blown away with it. Where we go next? Oh, the plant that's becoming more ubiquitous than anywhere than almost than loropetalums nowadays is Distylium. Distylium is probably more correct. This is a plant I have grown for decades and decades. It's something that at botanic gardens we knew about. It's something, it was what we called a bioplant, botanical interest only. Nobody's going to grow it as an ornamental. And they can be beautiful when they flower. It's not terribly showy. They're evergreen, and they have these little, basically petalless flowers along the branches. But if you come upon it in the middle of winter when they're often flowering, most of ours are more or less done. It can be really pretty, but never thought anybody would want it. But that was forgetting that people love, evergreen plants that can be planted in masses, and some of the ones they used to do, like autoleucon cherry laurel, all started getting shot hole fungus diseases and some other problems. And so they said, what's the next thing we can do? And Distylium came on the market. And I can just remember all my, botanic garden plant nerd friends thinking it was the craziest thing that they were out there. But hey, glad to see new plants enter the market. I just wish we would grow multiple things, not all the same thing. So there's two main species that we see in the landscapes, and then hybrids with them. There are these two. There's Distylium racemosum, which they have racemose flowers. They're in the little racemes, which all the species do, so, whatever. Kind of a broader leaf. They grow tall. They grow up. And Distylium racemosum. Over here, we have Distylium myricoides, the bayberry leaf or bayberry-like Distylium. It should be Distylium because there's two styles.
Yeah.
But
good luck getting somebody to read that any other way.
Yeah, so I say Distylium because that's what everybody says, and that's what we've decided we're going to call it. Go to Germany, though, we'll say Distylium and laugh at you for saying Distylium. So Distylium myricoides is low and spreading. So you see all these hybrids out there. This one is, just for you, the cultivar is PIIDIST-I.
Beautiful.
So that does tell you something. It's plant introduction.
Yeah.
Incorp Inc. Distylium, and it's
tells the whole story, honestly.
It is sold as Emerald Heights, which is a good name because it is a nice dark green. You can see it's deeper green than both of these. Although I think emerald is a more bright green, but that's okay. And it's tall. It is either fully racemosum or it is a hybrid, that's mostly racemosum. Then there are other ones like, I'm trying to think of I think copper tone is one that has kind of a coppery new growth color, but it's lower and wider, and that's more of the racemosum. Now there are other species. There's 16 species. I had to look it up. There's 16 species of these, most of which we don't grow. They're not known. Now, there may be in some collections where people have wild collected plants, but good luck keying them out. You really need to be a very, very good taxonomist to do that. So they generally get lumped into either, Myricoides or racemosum. This is one that we collected, not in the wild, but in a botanic garden, the Hansho Botanic Garden in kind of south of Shanghai a bit, that I had seen on my first trip to China. I'd seen it at that botanic garden. So when we went back a handful of years ago, it had seed on it. So we collected some seed, and it's Distylium buxifolium, so boxwood leafed Distylium. I don't know that I would call it boxwood leafed.
They're big boxwood leaves, but it does look like a boxwood leaf if you squint your brain real hard.
Yeah, and there are some boxwoods with big leaves, that we can't grow, like Cuban species, things like that. So we brought seed back and we grew out seed. And I don't remember there being other Distylium in the vicinity, but they all came out looking a little bit different. So there's either a lot of genetic variability inherent in this plant, or what we have are hybrids. So we're watching them, and maybe one day I will develop the intestinal fortitude to actually try to key what we have out and see if it keys to true buxifolium. I may not actually do that. All right, let's get in here with another one. This is kind of a much more strange or not grown, one that's not grown very often. This is Sycopsis sinensis in this case. And there are 3 species of Sycopsis. Sinensis and 2 other ones. I haven't grown the 2 other ones, and I can't remember the names right now. Interestingly, we have a plant in our collection that I didn't get a cutting from we call Sycopsis tucheri, but that doesn't seem to be a valid name. So who knows? But Sycopsis is another evergreen shrub. It's kind of like the very much really like an upright Distylium. It tends more towards upright tree rather than upright shrub. A little bit. We do have a variegated one as well, Sycopsis sinensis variegata, that you really have to squint to see the variegation, just because it's variegated, but it's very faint in the leaf. But one thing you notice, one way you can tell this is different from Distylium is, Distylium had their flowers in kind of racemes, little long, not, inch long things, whereas Sycopsis have capitate flowers. These are past, but they're kind of petalless red things with lots of stamens, and they're interesting if you are interested in that kind of thing. They are not showy, but they are interesting. It's like being mindful. You go in there and you're mindful, but you look at it and you're like, that is a very interesting structure if you look at it closely and think about it. If you just walk by it,
yeah,
it's not a camellia.
Absolutely. There's a whole world out there just waiting for you to pay attention to it.
That's exactly right. So that's a big difference. It's a great plant for us, and it's an evergreen plant. If you like having different things in your garden, you can seek this out, but it's not very commonly found. Usually you find it when we propagate it and get it out in plant sales and distributions. So we got a plant several years ago that was Sycopsis, Sycopsis sinensis. It's got these very narrow leaves. And it's very different from the other Sycopsis, that we've always seen, the Sycopsis sinensis. And so we dubbed it because the people we got it from didn't remember having it, and and I know where we got it, but they don't remember it. So it was starting to float around. We're starting to get cuttings, and since it was Sycopsis sinensis, we called it Psyops. It's a beautiful shrub. We really like it. I know at least one person, Pat McCracken at Garden Treasures, is producing it. But I looked at it and really saw it in flower for the first time this summer. I mean, this winter. because it's already done flowering. But you might be able to see some of the the old flower heads on here. And I need to look at it again next year, but they look more racemose than capitate. But there are some sections that look a little more capitate than completely racemose. Okay. So this is either a Distylium and probably some kind of Distylium myricoides because it's kind of out wide.
Sure.
Or it's a hybrid. And we have been finding that these plants will, some of these different genus will hybridize. So we're unsure of this as yet, but it kind of has characteristics of both Sycopsis and Distylium. So, cool thing. All right. A plant that that I love a lot, some people really, really love these. It's, it's kind of a specialty plant, but it's Parrotia, like parrot with IA on it. Parrotia. And forever, there was one species, Parrotia persica. So this is from Persia, Iran into the Himalayas. And it's a deciduous tree. The leaves are very definitely witch hazel-like. And it grows upright. With age, it gets absolutely spectacular bark on it. Takes it a while to get there, but it gets beautiful bark. I think of it as a slow-growing plant, relatively slow-growing. Pacific Northwest, it grows like crazy. The flowers, again, it's past, but they're like the Distylium, they're or Sycopsis. They just a bunch of red stamens. Again, pretty if you stop and look at them, but they're in little capitate heads as well. But then they get great fall color. This is one we got that's just the cultivar is burgundy, which is not really a valid cultivar name, but it gets good burgundy fall color. Others get different colors. They can really be all over the place. We do have, and maybe you can see this. This is Parrotia persica again. This is one that is Persian lace that has that's variegated. Has kind of a chartreuse edge to it with the green center. There's another that I read in Mike Durr's Manual of Woody Plants when I was a college student that he had in there that was Parrotia persica lamplighter that was heavily variegated with white. And we had that for a long time. I was so excited when I could get my hands on it. It was such a crap plant. It reverted and reverted and reverted. We couldn't keep up with pruning the thing to keep the reversions out. So finally, we just got rid of it. Now I'm like, maybe I should get it back and just really prune it. But the same thing with the Persian lace. You have to make sure that you're pruning out the reversions because it will tend to revert. So there is another species that was discovered. It was discovered long ago, but we didn't figure out it was a Parrotia until more recently, and that's Parrotia subequalis. And that's an Asian one, and it is a fast grower. Let me tell you, compared to Parrotia persica, it is a fast grower. And we grow it as a multi-stem shrub. I've seen it as a single trunk tree. And it goes black burgundy, really late summer. It's not even fall when it does that. And then it lasts like that and lasts like that. And then it turns screaming, blazing orange and yellow. It is so spectacular. It is so spectacular. It's hard to describe how amazing that plant is. It's kind of, it's got green leaves during the summer. It's got the little indistinct flowers. I didn't bring a piece of it because it hadn't leafed out, doesn't have any flowers on it. It just didn't seem like it thing, but it is such a good plant. And all of them tend to be pretty much exactly the same because it's a very, very small population. So everything in cultivation is based the same genetics. Here not very, not a beautiful looking thing. This is the old flowers here. Leaves are just coming out, but this is Sycopsis. So you cross this deciduous tree with this evergreen shrubby tree, which does not seem like it should work at all. And you get this hybrid, Sycopsis. Love that name. It's another one of those. It can get good fall color, but it doesn't get great fall color because, as you notice in the name, Sycopsis ex semi-decidua, it doesn't know whether it wants to take after one or the other of its parents and be evergreen or deciduous. So it is what I would, in this area, would call tardily deciduous. It goes completely deciduous for us pretty much every year, but it does it very late and it hangs on to a lot of leaves. And so you don't get that blast of fall color. And you go down farther south and it can be really much more evergreen, but nowhere is it completely evergreen. The flowers, again, are okay. This year it flowered very heavily. This is definitely, this falls into that botanical interest only because it's neither fish nor fowl. And,
I'll say the fall color on it last year was mind-blowing.
Is that right?
Yeah, but this year it did not come anywhere close to it. So it's really variable from year to year.
And this is one that's called purple haze that is supposed to have a little bit better fall color.
Yeah, and it did go to purple, but then it stopped at every color of the rainbow along the way. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. See, we need to cross that with the Parrotia subequalis, the Sycopsis.
Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah.
All right. Moving on. Now we're getting into some things that with actual, what are generally considered to people pretty flowers. So this is one of my very, very favorite genera, Corylopsis. And Corylopsis are all basically the same. That one doesn't really have any flowers. I won't show that one. In that they are wide-spreading, kind of rounded, deciduous shrubs with late winter, early spring flowers held yellow, some shade of yellow flowers held on little short racemes or chains from mostly branch tips, but also along the branches as well. There are some different ones, slightly different sizes. In general, usually think of Corylopsis gotoana or Corylopsis glabrata gotoana, variety gotoana, as one of the smaller ones, but that's not always the case. These are also ones that are often mislabeled. This is one that's really at its peak now. This gotoana is past peak. This one is, just a little past peak, but still close. This one is at peak color, but they range from kind of soft buttercup to this really vibrant yellow. This is one called Spring Gold, Corylopsis spicata, Spring Gold. Or Golden Spring. It was brought from Japan as ogon, which just means yellow or gold.
Gold, yeah.
But the new growth is chartreusey green. It's never blown me away with how gold it is. Sometimes, for a week maybe it's really gold, but then it kind of goes light green. But it is gorgeous, and it's in flower right now, kind of outside our Japanese garden. It's beautiful. This one is Corylopsis sinense, the Chinese Corylopsis. They're all Chinese Corylopsis, pretty much, but these have a little bit longer pedicel, the leaf stalk, so they tend to be a little more kind of graceful. This one, like I said, is gotoana. These kind of looser flower stalks than spicata. Another common one is Passiflora, which has very short little chains. Almost can't tell they're chains. But they're these, kind of have these zigzag stems and make these shrubs and then have really beautiful foliage all season. And like a lot of these, most of these witch hazel relatives don't have many problems in the landscape. The deer have never touched mine. And we'll say, all right, I probably got to get going.
You do.
Oh, I'm going long. I love these plants. All right, another one. This is a real weird one. This is the one in the family that's from Afghanistan. Parrotiopsis jacquemontiana. And it looks almost, when it's flowering, it's a little bit past flowering. I couldn't get great flowers. It looks almost, the petals like our flowering dogwood. 4 petals that are around there, but then it has this mass of stamens in the middle. It's the only one of the temperate HAM-A-MEL-I-DAC-E. I can't say for sure about the subtropical and tropical ones that I've never seen or grown, but it's the only one that has, well, not the only one, that has that real typical flower on there with real, what you would call petals, and then that central boss stamen. Makes a nondescript shrub. Most of these others I've talked about, the deciduous ones, during the summer, they look really nice. They're beautiful foliage. This one's kind of a scraggly looking guy. He's not, but a lot of plant nerds really want this plant. There's somebody on the West Coast who does tissue culture who's like, when are you going to propagate that for me? When are you going to propagate that for me? So I need to do that. So those of you who are members may want to see this before too long, because once it puts out new growth, we're going to do a bunch of cuttings of it and stick them and root them. And so you may see this. All right. Disanthus cercidifolius, and you can kind of already see cercidifolius, cercis like leaves, so that heart-shaped leaf, but these are shrubs. They're not even really big shrubs. They are often mostly very difficult for us to grow. So Disanthus, there's 2 species, maybe 3. The cercidifolius is the one that's in the trade. You need to have a really good spot. Some shade, some cool areas, moist, well-drained soil, ideally not too hot. If it's too hot, they just won't grow. There is one at Juniper Level Botanic Garden that seems to be much more heat tolerant. It's out in full sun. It gets plenty of water where it is, but it's out in full sun, and there's no way most Disanthus could go out in full sun. This one is Inanishiki, which is like most things with Nishiki in the name from Japan are variegated to some extent. This could have been called Ina fukurin, because that means the fukurin generally means kind of creamy white yellow border to the plant. We will have this, a handful of these in our plant sale this spring.
Nice.
I'm guessing they may sell out on the online portion.
Sure.
For the members. Okay, now we get weird. Weirder. All right, this is a big one. This is exbucklandia, sometimes called the Malayan aspen, although it's not from Malaya. Maybe somebody shortened that from Himalayan aspen.
Oh, maybe.
It probably grows in the bottom parts of the Himalayas. Real easily distinguished by these great big glossy evergreen leaves. I mean, there are other plants that have these lobed big evergreen leaves, but they will have this huge stipule on them, the little leaf-like structure at the base of the leaf. So real easy to distinguish by those. And I saw one growing in a garden in New Zealand that had deep red stipules. Oh, I love it. I know which park it is. If I ever get back there and I'm doing any kind of plant collecting, I'm going to get cuttings of it.
No kidding.
There are 3 species, and we may or may not have all of them. We have, this is exbucklandia populnea. We have one that we had as exbucklandia populnea, and we still have it that way. We're still trying to figure it out. But a Hamamelis expert who came here, a grad student who was doing their master's on the HAM-A-MEL-I-DAC-E, came and was looking at it in flower, and she said, I think that might be longipediolata, exbucklandia longipediolata. And then we have this one, which is exbucklandia tonkinensis. And this is one that actually I collected in southern China. And I'll set that there, and I don't know if it's how visible it is, but you can see kind of that seed structure. And it's like very many things in the HAM-A-MEL-I-DAC-E family. You can actually see the resemblance to the sweet gums, kind of like on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
And many of these seed pods on many of the HAM-A-MEL-I-DAC-E, they form dry capsules. And when they dry and completely ripen, they burst open. And it's always fun seed collecting. You get some of those and you have them drying in paper bags, before you get them in cleaned and inspected and everything. And all of a sudden it'll sound like there's popcorn going in. I would have told you this was 100% not hardy. When I got here, we had a small plant beside our education center. It's gotten some damage, some winter damage, some, I think, just health issues with that area, but it's been fine. And this exbucklandia tonkinensis, I had one growing in protected spot by my house, the one we collected, and it shot up to 12 or 15 feet very quickly, which made me think even more this isn't hardy. And then it blew over because it was right by my house where I was trying to protect it, and it blew over. I dug it up, didn't cut it back or anything, just carried it down into my woodland, planted it, put some stays on it to keep it upright. Thing has never missed a beat. It does not get winter damage.
No kidding.
Deer, when it was young, when I put it in my woodland, it was 12 or 15 feet tall. Deer ate the leaves, which I could not believe, these thick leathery leaves,
honestly,
up to deer browse height.
Sure.
And it's fine above that. It actually saved me the trouble of pruning it. Now we're gonna get to the thing that was so exciting when I learned this plant. Rhodoleia. Nice evergreen plant, right? Nice foliage on there. How about this for flowers?
No kidding. Stunned silence, I believe, is what we're getting.
This is amazing. So they all flower like this. They all are pink. This is both of these are Rhodoleia henryi, which has so far been the one that's mostly in the trade and probably the best of them. This is a Japanese form called Takashitase.
There it is.
Takashitase. And I remember seeing this in flower at Nurseryman's. It was inside his office, and just being like, I didn't know things like that existed.
Fair.
I mean, and his was on a little plant in a container. These get pretty big. Ours, we have both of these in the lath house, and they're
poking up through the top of it.
Up through the top. And so this is, and I have found this Takashitase to be one of the better ones, but you can see it's got those nice petals, so it looks kind of like flower. They hang down, but these, in fall, the flower buds like these, but closed up, will be on there, and they'll all be hanging off. And when we get a real cold winter, you'll go in there and you say, I wonder if those flower buds are good, and you touch the plant and they fall like rain.
Oh.
So we don't get flowers at all, not infrequently. This is one that's in the trade, and I like it. It's a little bit darker, a little bit broader petals, a little bit bigger flower. And it is Rhodoleia henryi scarlet bells. I don't know why you named that scarlet. It isn't scarlet at all. But it's beautiful, and this one has a real nice white backside to the leaf. This one's okay. Most of them are like that, though. They'll have some on there. Now this one in the container, we think is probably Rhodoleia parvipetala, just based on where we collected it in Vietnam. It may be a new species. We're not sure. It is probably not going to be reliably hardy for us. We have a few of them. We'll plant out a couple and we'll propagate the heck out of them. But both great plants if you can grow them. There's another species that we thought was going to be, that I've grown before. It was very much not hardy. Rhodoleia championii. And I've grown, not hardy. I collected some seed at the South China Botanic Garden, which is subtropical, just because it was loaded with seed, and how can you pass up? And we planted some around in different places, and most of them didn't do particularly well. They died during the winters, and but there were two. One that we had given to Juniper Level Botanic Garden and one we had planted here, which were thriving and really not taking damage. The one at Juniper Level Botanic Garden was so nice that when Tony built his new house on the property, they dug that one to move to his house and it died.
Oh.
But we have one, actually it's just kind of off to my left over there, that has not flowered very well for us yet. It's gotten a few flowers, but hasn't set flower buds. Not like they're losing them. But one cold winter, I went around and looked, and scarlet bells took a lot, lost all the flower buds on them, but took a lot of leaf damage, killed it back some. Takashitasai took very much less leaf damage, but some, and those are both in the lath house. The Rhodoleia championii we had took less than any of them. And the Rhodoleia parvipetala that we had a very, very protected spot, died. So we've named that, after watching it for quite a few years, we've named it Rhodoleia championii Winter Champion. And we're getting it propagated and wanting to get it out. So I have one that I didn't put on the list.
Okay.
But I'll show it just because the flowers are a little bit different, but I'm not going to talk about it much. This is Fortuneria sinensis. This is a tree. It does this with the flowers, which are kind of neat, but not really showy, from more than a foot or two away. And it's definitely botanical interest only, but I'd cut it, so I felt like I should say something about it.
It's cute.
Yeah. When it's in fruit, in the wild, I confuse this, and there's another species that we grow, Sino-Wilsoniana.
Okay.
But it's, again, a bio plant. So I don't know. Do I have time for a question or two?
We have all the time in the world. Y'all, you don't have to stick around if you don't want to. You are a free human being. Live your life for sure. But those of us that want to learn a little bit more about plants, you are in the right place. So let's ask a question from Jared. Jared says he's now realizing just how much he loves this family of plants. Just this spring, he bought a Parrotia, a Disanthus, a Distylium, and a Rhodoleia. He thinks he's pushing his luck with Rhodoleia henryi up in Pennsylvania. He is wondering how cold has the one we have survived to?
So the one we have, it was an established plant, and it was in our lath house, so it's somewhat protected.
Yeah.
We got down to 6 degrees.
Okay.
Dip overnight, so it didn't stay that way long. It dipped down, and probably in the lath house, I usually guesstimate 3 degrees.
Fair enough.
Give it 3 degrees. That's probably overly generous. So maybe 9 degrees. I don't know where you are in Pennsylvania. I'm guessing you're Philadelphia area, but I don't know. There was a Rhodoleia growing, don't know if it's still there, in a very, very sheltered courtyard on the Swarthmore campus.
No kidding.
I doubt it ever flowers, but...
Sure.
But you probably could cut a branch before you get too cold, once the flower buds are really set and it's dormant and it's been cold for a little while, but not so cold it kills it. Cut a branch or two and bring them inside, and you probably could force it and at least see the flowers that way. Witch-hazels are great for that, just in general.
Absolutely.
You can cut them and bring them inside and enjoy them.
Awesome. Let's stay in the vein of Rhodoleias. Stacy is wondering if they are only for shade.
I'm sorry, which one?
The Rhodoleia.
The Rhodoleia. I don't. No, they're not. They're not, because the Rhodoleia championii that I collected seed off of in the garden was out in full sun.
No kidding.
And I should mention the Henry eyes that we've all grown are shrubby plants. They'll get big shrubby plants, but the championii, every one I've grown of that is really more like a single trunk tree. Small tree, but and ours is doing that as well.
Okay, nice. Hale wants to know, what are the most cold-hardy loropetalums?
I don't know, Hale.
No kidding.
Up there on Lookout Mountain, I'm sure it gets cold, but I really don't know that at all.
Sure.
Sorry.
No worries. Okay. Marilyn wants to know if there is a common name for Distylium that people actually use. She says she got one a while ago called the blue leaf Isu tree, but she's never heard anybody say that again. You said it's really common in the industry. Is there?
Yeah, they're calling it Distylium, I think.
Okay.
Blue Isu tree is the name that you will get if you look at a label at a botanic garden or if you look at it online.
Yeah.
I've never heard somebody call it that either. We have it on our labels, and I've never heard anybody call it that. And
no kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah, Distylium.
Distylium.
There it is, the horticulturist common name.
There you go.
The generic name.
The right name is Distylium, but the common name is Distylium.
There it is. Oh, yeah, we figured it out. Wonderful. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are advancing the front of science as we speak on this program.
That's right.
That's amazing.
That's right.
Okay, well, that is all of the questions that have come in. So I will thank you very much, Mark, for pulling together all these plants and sharing your love of HAM-A-MEL-I-DAC-E with us.
I love it. You know what? I spent all morning going around collecting plants and things like that. My meeting got canceled, and I didn't look at email at all.
What
it was awesome.
Day.
Great day, yeah.
Wowee. Okay,
yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope you all are having as beautiful a day as Mark is having. I hope we will see you all next week on our Day of Giving. We will be broadcasting all day in this very Zoom room from 10 to 4:30, and all those recordings will end up on YouTube. So we hope we see you all at some point during that day. We'll see y'all next time. Y'all take care.